for people coming over the border illegally. Why not go to LA? Why not go to Kansas City? They want to go to New York because of this right to shelter. It's a magnet.
We're a city of immigrants that arrived here the right way. And that right to shelter is for New Yorkers, homeless New Yorkers, not people who have traveled 20 different countries to get to New York, just because they know that they will get health care, they'll get food, now they'll get a credit card, they'll get a shelter, and then we'll get expedited work visas. What happened to all the people who were waiting? How fair is that everybody's jumping the line? It is a humanitarian crisis, and it's being handled on a local level, where this type of crisis would never be handled on a local level. It would always be handled on a federal level. But the federal government has kind of shut the door on us. People were furious with the state elected officials, from the governor down. They were furious with the congressional leadership. They were furious with the president. And they were very vocal about it. So it is going to trickle down into the elections, because they don't want to move. The only recourse they have is election day, and trying to vote more common sense people into office.
Welcome to New York Insider. I'm Liam O'Neill. Joining me today is Ms. Joanne Ariola. She's councilwoman for the 32nd District in New York City. That's roughly southern Queens.
Yes, it is.
And today we are going to be mostly talking about the illegal migrant situation and maybe a couple of other issues along the way. Welcome to New York Insider.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
So we've been trying to set up this interview for about a couple of months, but you've been busy, I've been busy, but here we are. I remember at that time you had a lawsuit along with State Assemblywoman Williams,
yes,
against Mayor Adams, Hochul, etc., for the migrant camp in your district, Floyd Bennett Field, and I understand you've lost that lawsuit. Is that correct?
Well, the Judge Sweeney found that Judge Sweeney's decision granted the city and the state's request for dismissal. That's what the memorandum said.
Okay, so it will be dismissed.
It will be dismissed. And now we are looking at the memorandum to see if we have a path for appeal. Because that's what we'll do if we do have a path.
Mm-hmm. So it might be a moot point, but maybe not, because the situation is still there. Why did this lawsuit come about? Explain the situation at Floyd Bennett Field.
The situation we have at Floyd Bennett Field is that Floyd Bennett Field is a national park. And I could not believe that the governor was asking the president to utilize a national park for a migrant base camp. And it was to house 2,000 illegal migrants, families. Our first response was, would she do this at Yosemite? Would she do this, at Yellowstone? Why would she do this at Floyd Bennett Field? And we went to, Jamie and I went to Congress and asked that question.
Jamie Williams, Assemblywoman.
Jamie Williams. Jamie Williams and I have been at the forefront of this. We've been fighting this together. We have gone to court together. We've gone to D.C. together. We've gone to Floyd Bennett Field many times together, both when it was flooding, when it was windy, and to go and do multiple walkthroughs. And it is just not a place that is livable for any human being.
So is it a humanitarian crisis? Is that fair to say?
It is a humanitarian crisis, and it's being handled on a local level, where this type of crisis would never be handled on a local level. It would also always be handled on a federal level. But the federal government has kind of shut the door on us and said, well, sorry, you guys have to figure this out.
Many problems you've told me about and I've read about from that Floyd Bennett Field migrant camp. Can you relay top 2 or 3 that come to mind?
Panhandling, aggressive panhandling, people coming onto people's property, begging for money, showing their phones that say, I'm from Floyd Bennett Field, I'm a migrant, please give me money. We've had people who opened their front door, were bringing in groceries and found a migrant in their foyer. 911 was called, complaints were made, but this is a problem.
affecting the health and wellness, safety of the neighborhood.
It's the quality of life for the neighborhoods that are, see, the camp itself is in Jamie Williams Assembly District, but it is adjacent to my council district. So it is literally a walking bridge away, the Marine Parkway Bridge. You could walk across that and you are right on the Rockaway Peninsula. So what concerns me and why we had this large meeting last night is I really want to be proactive in finding out from the City of New York, from H&H who runs that particular facility, from our police department, and get input from the community as to what we see as possible problems coming with the summer months. Right now it's cold. The migrants are going north to Kings Plaza Mall, to Avenue U. They're setting up, illegal street vending operations. They're most of the time have children with them that should be in school. It's a very dangerous situation. So we want to be proactive and preventative when it comes to what could happen come this summer, because we have beaches.
Oh, I see. So, okay, so back up to last night. You had this meeting with your constituents?
Yes.
How many people were there? And
Close to 300.
it was all about
It
these
was
issues that you
about
mentioned.
these issues. What's going to happen once the weather gets warmer? How are the police going to protect us? Who should we call if we see people on our block panhandling? Is it 911? Is it 311? How long will it be before someone comes and responds? What are we getting extra details because we have a migrant base camp less than a mile from our community? All those questions, and I'm glad to say that we were able to answer the majority of them.
So, what are some of the answers?
So
What
some
are
of
you
the
gonna
answers
do?
are that we get in Rockaway, we get a summer detail. So I'm going to fight for more officers
Police.
to be part of that summer
NYPD
detail.
detail.
Right. Also, one of the neighborhoods in Neponset, they have a private security company as well. And in Bell Harbor, they're looking to do block watchers. So that should be helpful. When we started to see people coming into Rockaway from the base camp, it was a red flag because we have Beach 116th Street, we have Beach 129th Street. These are bustling, commercial corridors, and we don't want people to feel intimidated by anyone coming onto those corridors to go shopping. We don't, and that's what was happening. So luckily, people have a relationship. They really are great civic associations that are over in that area, and they work closely with the police department. They work closely with our office. Everyone was notified, and we were able to really mitigate that problem quite quickly. But it was a very small problem because, again, it's very cold. I think that problem will exacerbate once the warm weather comes in and they see that the beaches are there. Now,
Just to be clear, this problem that we're referring to is people coming onto these boulevards.
they go on and they're panhandling. They're begging for money. They're selling wares.
And in such numbers that it's kind of overrunning.
Yes, they're putting up stands on Beach 116th Street to sell chocolate and mangoes or any type of food that they have. It's literally illegal street vending. So they're removed. We see parents with their children, some strapped to their backs, and others who should be in school just begging at the traffic lights and have children bobbing and weaving in and out of traffic. This is dangerous.
And it's a daily occurrence.
It's a daily occurrence.
What kind of numbers are we talking about?
Well, yesterday we were able to address, I would say, 10 individual families that were along Woodhaven Boulevard. And then once I came into the southern portion of the district, because I have a northern portion of the district up in Glendale. And when I came down into the southern portion, there were more families. So I'm dealing with the 104 precinct, the 102 precinct, the 106, and the 100th. So I'm constantly making phone calls because there's children. That's when it really most affects me. When I see that parents are there and they have a 3-month-old strapped to their back with just a blanket from their shelter, that's a problem. The children are endangered. So that's when we wind up calling 911. And then we deal with the illegality of what they're doing and selling, because they are illegal street vendors.
Wow. Okay. So that was just happening a week or so ago.
It's happening every day.
Every day, with the weather getting warmer, you're anticipating it happening even more.
It's going to get worse.
Do we see, where are we at with migrants in New York City? How have the numbers, they've risen, they've fallen, they've risen, they've fallen. Where are we at in terms of the numbers? Do you know?
Because of our cold weather, the people arriving had lessened, but now we're seeing the numbers jump up again.
Yeah. Because there's been no fix at the southern border.
There's no fix at the southern border. Even the amended right to shelter is not enough, to really help the city do their job and turn buses away. And that's really what we have to start to do. We have to start to turn buses away. We now have such an uptick in crime from the respite centers, the all-male migrant centers that are like the base camps at Randall's Island. We're seeing upticks in stabbings and police assaults and just assaults on each other, assaults on our citizens. We've seen an enormous uptick in shoplifting.
Yeah. You've glossed over right to shelter. I think some of our viewers maybe don't know what that is. Can you explain the right to shelter?
So many years ago, when there was a large population of New Yorkers who did not have homes, they were homeless.
I think this is in the 80s.
Yes. The city came up with a right to shelter. And that right to shelter is for New Yorkers, homeless New Yorkers, not people who have traveled 20 different countries to get to New York, just because they know that they will get health care, they'll get food, now they'll get a credit card, they'll get a shelter, and then we'll get expedited work visas. What happened to all the people who were waiting? How fair is that everybody's jumping the line? We have someone from CUNY that comes to our office every Monday. She works with immigrants that are looking to get their green cards the right way, sponsored. And now she said, people who are waiting 4 and 5 and 6 years are pushed to the back of the line so that the illegal migrants are getting their first chance to get online. They get first preference. And it is infuriating those people, infuriating them. They said, we did it right. And then if you add to that MS-13, one of the newspapers were reporting that they're giving out that Social Security cards and green cards, Social Security cards that might have your Social Security number or mine, which is, it's identity theft, so that these illegals can go and get jobs.
Okay, so again, back to right to shelter. This is something specific in New York City that is, I think you're saying, a draw for people coming over the border illegally. Why not go to LA? Why not go to Kansas City? They want to go to New York because of this right to shelter. It's a magnet.
Yeah.
And how much is it costing?
So we're looking at $10 billion right now.
Over how many years?
10 billion. We're coming on the second year.
10 billion over 2 years.
Yeah. In April. April will be 2 years.
Projections for the future?
Projections are, it's unknown, because it is an absolute money pit. It was thinking, I think it was 388, give or take $1, per person, per day, to take care of an illegal migrant.
$388 for the lodging, for the credit card, for all these things that you mentioned.
For all the things, for the medical insurance. And it isn't right, because we have people who are just about making it. They have 2 incomes in their families, and they're just getting by because of the cost of living. And that's just unfair to them. And then when we want to look at housing then, and put the preference of the housing for the migrants and put them in sustainable housing, what about people that were here? Like, we'll take people that want to stay in New York but can't because it's overpriced.
I believe.
Why aren't we offering that to our own New Yorkers?
Is it correct that, was it last May 2023, in May, I believe, Mayor Adams wanted to change right to shelter, and some months later got the green light from Hochul, Governor Hochul. Where do we stand with that?
So they amended it. It wasn't the amendment that the mayor wanted. So we have what's now a 30 and 60-day stay. So it's a 30-day stay for single men, a 60-day stay, and then they have to be reticketed for families.
For families.
So with this, it was amended that after the 30 days, they no longer have to reticket the single men, but they still do have to reticket the families. However, it doesn't stop the buses from coming in.
So does it mean the men get 30 days of shelter in New York City, but then that's it?
Right, they don't have to be reticketed.
But families?
They will be reticketed.
Indefinitely?
Yes.
There's no end to that?
There's no end. I mean, the city is doing the best they can to try and find places where they have family across the United States or in other countries and try and, rehome, or decompress, as they call it. Try and find places, family for them to go to, friends for them to go to. But when you're talking about 170,000 plus migrants that have come through in our city's borders and 70,000 that are in our care, it is almost impossible to really see those numbers go down, especially when we're still getting an influx. Even with the mayor's executive order that we needed to have advance notice, because now they're just going to New Jersey, getting on a train and coming in. So whatever is being done, whatever executive orders are being implemented, or whatever court cases that are being seen and heard, we're just not getting the right answers. We need help.
What's the temperature of the city council these days in terms of doing more to help the migrants, or doing more to keep the migrants at bay, or prevent them from coming in and
so you have
costing more?
You have the Progressive Caucus saying we need to give them more. We need to have more migrants. Yes, bring them into our city. Yes, we have to make sure that they have housing. Yet, when they go to open up a shelter in their districts, they say, no, that's not suitable for migrants. I'm sorry.
Because
so
the standard,
they're contradictory of themselves.
It's not appropriate because why?
Why? Why isn't it appropriate? It's appropriate that people live on a flooded airplane strip. When it rained a few weeks ago, people at Floyd Bennett Field, they were not evacuated. However, because I went there with Assemblymember Williams, there was a 3-foot moat of water that surrounded the base camp, and they were unable to leave the base camp. That's okay? So the Progressive Caucus talks out of two sides of their mouth. At least the Common Sense Caucus says it like it is, and I'm proud to be part of it.
Okay, so they're criticizing some of these shelters because they're not good enough, or they're too good, or what?
They're not good enough.
They're not good enough.
This isn't a good place, but they won't offer a good place.
I see.
But we should put them in some place, but just not that place. And that's just not fair, because they're the ones that are pushing for all the programming. The one thing that was good about the decision on the right to shelter was that there was a council member who was pushing for legislation that would take away the 30, 60-day stay. And now because of this, it kind of dampened that legislation, and it won't go anywhere.
You mean that they were trying to remove that?
It's trying to remove it.
To go back to the 80s ruling of
to the
indefinite
stay. Right.
Okay. But we have the 30-60 in place. One of the arguments, right, for maybe coming from the progressives or others, we are a city of immigrants, and we do have a lot of jobs that can be filled. What do you say to that?
I say we are a city of immigrants. We're a city of immigrants that arrived here the right way. And I believe that there are people who have come here right now and crossed that border seeking asylum for the right reasons. But I also think that there are many people that have come here. They were bad actors in their own country, and now they're bad actors in our country. And that's why we're seeing an uptick in drug sales, fentanyl deaths, and assaults on our citizens and on our police.
So clearly your constituency is concerned with quality of life.
Absolutely.
Being impacted. Are they concerned about the money that's being spent? Are they feeling that?
They are concerned about the money that's being spent, because a lot of them are veterans. The Department of Veterans, their budget is $5 million. Why can't we take money and put more money into veteran housing? We could put money into senior housing. We could put more money into workforce housing. So there's so that our EMS who have not received the amount of pay parity that they're due for the job that they do are no longer living at home with their parents and can afford to have a place of their own.
So the money's coming from somewhere.
Right. We're supposed to be getting it from the state. But because they're saying there's a glitch, we had a hearing not too long ago, said, well, the state hasn't paid any money and then the state said, well, we didn't pay you any money because we didn't get any receipts. I mean, we need money now, but what will the money really do? If we got $100 billion from the state, if we don't change the right to shelter laws, it would be like pouring water into a bucket with a hole in it. And that's all it will be. And then you're going to see there's been over 200,000 people that have fled this city. And now we're starting to see it in the communities of color. And then we see it on businesses. They're fleeing.
I see.
And why? Why are they fleeing? Because they don't feel safe, and they don't feel they have a good quality of life, and they don't feel that their children can get a good education in our public schools. Our public schools used to rank #1 across the country. That is no longer the case.
You know what they rank now?
I don't know where they rank, but I do know that over the last 2 years, majority of people have left the public schools and have gone into parochial schools and private schools. There are now waiting lists for schools that are private and parochial that will once go into close.
So the flight from New York was already happening because of, well, various reasons, but there's an uptick in the last couple of years since the migrant crisis.
Yes.
More people leaving, and with that comes the problem of paying, right? Because a lot of times when they leave, these are people of means who are leaving, and they're taking their jobs and their money with them.
They are. These are people who are teachers, nurses, MTA workers, construction workers. The real economic engine of this city is the middle class, and that's who's fleeing. If you're upper middle or you're a wealthier person, you can afford to live anywhere. But here was the middle class found their home here in New York, but they no longer feel safe. They no longer feel that they can get to and from work on time without the threat of being assaulted. You can't go on the subway. We're having congestion pricing jammed down our throats, right? But who's going to take the subway? We now have the National Guard on our subway. They don't come here because it's safe. We're having people pushed onto the tracks. We get a report every day in our emails. People being stabbed in the subway system. People being shot. People being assaulted. You cannot take public transportation. And now they want to make it unaffordable for us to come in by car.
How do we get out of this in terms of the migrants?
I think that.
What do you think as the councilwoman you can do?
Well, as a councilwoman, I am worried about keeping the 32nd district very safe. And I work very hard to do that. I try and get as many police officers out of the new classes as I can. We only have one class coming out this time, but as many as I can. I learn to work with our civic associations, have a great open dialogue with them and communication. I am available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and even on holidays. You call, I answer. And that has made a lot of difference because people feel, I'm seeing someone on my corner. Who would I call? Oh my gosh, it's Memorial Weekend. Who am I calling? They call me, and I make sure that an officer goes out there to make sure that whether it is a Con Edison person or not, I make sure that those people are safe. So I always say, I watch the borders of the 32nd Council District. Beyond that, I consistently meet with the mayor's office and the speaker's office to talk about how we can change things, because there's a very different idea on both sides of that building right now. And also, I would like to see ICE reinstated to do what they need to do, especially with the bad actors. And we've met with ICE not too long ago, and we're going to be meeting with the mayor and ICE because we need a workaround with the sanctuary city and the right to shelter so that ICE can at least detain a violent felon who was arrested and was given bail and brought to Rikers Island to go then into ICE detention. And when that person is adjudicated, depending on the outcome, can be deported.
So the city can look at right to shelter, and also you just mentioned sanctuary state or sanctuary city. That's both, really. Is there traction on altering sanctuary state?
I haven't seen any traction on the governor's part, but I have heard her say that she thinks that ICE needs to get more involved. So, I mean, she sees this has become a problem. But are they strong enough to fight back the very small yet loud portion of the left? Are they strong enough to do that? And that's the question.
So there are also, because of the precedents in place, there is also the threat of lawsuit, right? There is lawsuit from a big nonprofit sector who are going to say, Mayor, Mr. Mayor, you have to shelter these men. After 30 days, it's unlawful, and there are going to be lawsuits. How much is that going to cost the city?
Well, this is what I say. I'd rather take the lawsuit. It'll cost less than the billions of dollars that we're spending to house these illegal migrants. And where are the advocates? You bring up the lawsuits. Where's the Legal Aid Society? Where are the environmentalists? Where are the advocates for the homeless when they go and see how the living conditions are at Floyd Bennett Field? Where are they? Where is the outrage for that? They have more outrage today at our public safety hearing than for the quality of life of the people who are living at Floyd Bennett Field, who have said publicly that it is a terrible quality of life for them.
So who's saying that there's a big quality of life? Sorry.
The migrants themselves living at Floyd Bennett Field have been interviewed by a number of media outlets and have said this is a terrible place for us to live. We cannot get our children to school. We're too far from any hub for food, for clothing. It's remote. And the conditions inside, they're living in cubicles without any roof. So they have a locked cubicle, but if they leave, they have to take all their belongings with them because someone can climb right over and steal their belongings, and they come back to nothing. It's a terrible sight to watch.
You mentioned a public hearing last night in your district. What are the public hearings on like this at City Hall?
So when we do have public hearings, the agencies come and the agencies tell us exactly what they're doing and how they're managing this. And that's all they're trying to do because they have no other choice. And I give them kudos for the job that they're doing. I really do, because they were given an insurmountable amount of work, and they're doing the best with what they have. And that is, that's the problem. And then we say, well, we need more money. And it always comes down to the fact that this is an issue that is a humanitarian crisis that should be handled on a federal level, and it's been just dumped on a locale.
What about the outcry from residents who feel a quality of life going down?
So I believe that when we say this to the panel, their job is to work with the migrants and make sure that they're safe and make sure that they have their housing. So when we have our usual bi-monthly asylum seeker meeting, I proposed that we do a curfew, and that really was heard, and they started to roll out the curfew. If our shelters that house New Yorkers who are homeless have curfews, why don't our migrant shelters have curfews? And that was like an aha moment at the meeting. And so they started to roll it out at the respite centers, then the intake center, and now today they did it at the largest base camp we have over at Randall's Island. And I've been assured that they're looking to see how they can work this, because it would be the first time it's at a large facility like Floyd Bennett Field that has families, to see how they could work a curfew. But a curfew would really help.
Some have suggested that at the federal level, the migrant issue might be one of the biggest, if not the biggest, determinant of the election outcome. Do you see that trickling down into the state and city level?
Absolutely. People were furious last night, furious with the state elected officials, from the governor down, furious. They were furious with the congressional leadership. They were furious with the president, and they were very vocal about it. So it is going to trickle down into the elections because they don't want to move. So the only recourse they have is election day, and trying to vote more common sense people into office. And that's what they have to do. And if they do it, and they have to come out not in 17% of an entire city, they have to come out in enormous percents because they want to stay here, they want their children to be educated here, and they want to be able to be safe. I have an 86-year-old mother that says, you keep me in this house, I can't even open the door. And she's not accustomed to that. She's been living in her house for over 60 years. And it's only recently that she has to keep her door locked and the alarm on at all times. And she lives in a very good neighborhood. It's just not fair.
Wow. Well, that seems like a message to end on. I was going to ask, do you have anything else to tell people? But do you want to build on that one?
Just say that people need to feel safe. In order for people to stay and have any type of trust and confidence in their elected officials, they have to be able to feel safe going in their home, outside their home, going to and from work. They have to feel that their community is clean, that the community is cared for, and that they can give their children a good education and their children are safe in school. And we've seen now that there's been some incidences in schools where they weren't safe.
Yeah. We've talked about that, some of those things out here on this program, but our time is up for today. Ms. Joanne Ariola, thanks so much for being on New York Insider.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Liam.